Hey, so have you ever noticed that there are certain star signs that just crop up in your life all the time, i.e., there are lots of friends and family that have birthdays within the same 3 weeks or so? Have you ever noticed that? Or how you have one really busy month every year where there's lots of parties or anniversaries and things like that? Well, there's a reason to that, an absolute strong astrological reason for that. And to find out more, stay tuned. Hey everyone, it's Louisa from Feel Good Astrology, and I'm here to help you learn practical beginner's astrology that's going to help you make a difference in your life, to be able to use astrology to profit yourself, to help you thrive. Now, a moment ago, I asked you, had you ever noticed that you have a busy time in your life where there's lots of anniversaries or birthdays and friends and stuff, all, that have stuff going on, that is there a big correspondence? Have you ever noticed that? Well, there is a reason for that. And it's because of your birth chart, and it has something to do with the resonance in your chart and that particular star sign that they all fall into. So you might find out that there are much bigger correlations with star signs or sun signs or zodiac signs than you've ever really realized before. Now, my next question to you is, what star sign or sun sign are you? And was that the first time you got to know astrology? For me, I learned about astrology. My first knowledge of it was when I was about 5 or 6. And my mum said that I was born in between two signs, on the cusp between Sagittarius and Capricorn. And so she said I was very lucky I had two signs, and I thought I must be really important. And so instantly that made me want to learn all I could about astrology. I've since realized that I was a little bit eager in my desire to be special, but it's still quite interesting. So often a lot of us first come to astrology through their horoscopes or the application of treating a 12th of the population with the same personality. This is my least favorite part of astrology, I have to admit. But let me tell you a little bit about the background. I'm not going to go in depth because this is just beginner's astrology, and it's about practical astrology, like how can you use it? And to be fair, a lot of the theories, a lot of the calculations, all that kind of stuff, you don't need to know about. Really, to be a practical astrologer, you need to be able to interpret your chart. And so that's why I'm not going to go too in depth. But let me give you a bit of background now. In this session, we're going to learn about the Zodiac Belt, what it is and what it looks like, and is it real, and how it came to pass. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the star signs and how they're formed. So there is a bit of an order, there is a model that the star signs fall into. Now, if I go back to the original analogy, if you remember at the start of this course, I said that there were some key components to a chart and that they all had their place in the design of your home. So if you imagine your house for a minute, your actual house that you're sat in, there's the building itself and the rooms. Now, to me, that is, if I was to find the equivalent in astrology, that is the structure of the chart, which is a circle, and the angles, they're your supporting walls, and then the houses, the little sections within the chart, they're your rooms in your house. So if you imagine your bathroom has a purpose, your kitchen has a purpose, your bedroom has a purpose, your study or lounge has a purpose, you might even have an office in your house, as many do these days. And each of your rooms in your house has a doorway to it, the cusp between one part of the house and another. So I think our house is a good analogy to the structure of the birth chart. Then we've got signs, star signs. And if you think about your house, every room probably has a slightly different sense of decor. Your kitchen might have a few more hard surfaces, maybe stainless steel or tile and certain colors. You might want to minimize a splashback from when you're cooking, and so you've got things in place. Your lounge might have more comforting colors because you want to relax. Your bedroom might be even more relaxing still. So I see that the design or the flavor of the room, the decoration of the room, is a bit like the star sign, because in your birth chart, every one of your houses starts in a particular star sign or sun sign, and it flavors the way you express that house. So, for instance, in the chart that we're following in this series of Evelyn Thomas, in her fifth house, it starts in the sign of Aquarius. So her fifth house, about creativity and what she's passionate about, has an Aquarian flavor. And so that's how the star signs or sun signs start to make sense in your chart. So anyway, let's get back to the star signs themselves. So you may have heard about the Zodiac Belt, and the idea of it, if you look at the graphic, you'll see that there is the idea astrologically that the Earth is in the center, and that we have all the planets orbiting around us, and they're all orbiting at different speeds, and they're in different, they're different distances from us, and they also have different tilts from us. So that if you imagine, I'm trying to demonstrate with my hand, but if you imagine the Earth, let's use a pencil. So the Earth is in the center of our astrological model, or our geocentric model. The Earth's at the center, and then we've got planets orbiting around us at different speeds, at different distances from us, and they've got different tilts. Let's find another pencil. Hang on. So, one planet might be orbiting at a sort of tilt like this, another might be like this, and they're all at different relative distances and speeds. But around this whole solar system, we have projected a belt. And we call that belt the ecliptic, or the zodiac. It's the zodiac ecliptic. It is a belt of a certain distance, and it goes all the way around. Now, remember, it's flat, and we might be tilting a little bit within it, but essentially it is a thick band that goes around us that we all fit in. And sometimes it appears that a planet goes outside of it. But anyway, we've got this band around us. And so from our position in the middle in Earth, we might look at a part of, we might notice that Venus is just here, where my finger is, and it's pointing in the direction of a particular part of the belt. So the belt is separated into 12 different signs. And so it might be that our Venus is pointing in the direction of Aquarius, and then we've got Pisces, and then we've got Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and all the way around. So this belt has got the star signs around them. Now, how did this happen? Well, I guess we need to go back to the time when astronomy and astrology were the same. And I'm not going to go into this in a great detail, because you really don't need to know it, and I'll be complicating things for no good reason. I could do an actual separate show about the actual ecliptic and the formation and the constellations and stuff. For now, all you need to know is there was a time when astrology and astronomy were one of the same, before they were separated. And during that time, people looked to the heavens to find meaning. And during that time, they noticed the position of the stars and the fixed stars, and they noticed particular patterns or constellations. So there was a constellation to do with the Archer, which is Sagittarius. There's constellations about all the different star signs. Now, in our model, our belt, each star sign occupies a 30-degree space, because 30 times 12 equals 360. In reality, if you were to look at the constellations, there are some constellations that are much bigger than the others. So it's not an exact science, but over time it was observed that when the sun went through a particular constellation, certain things happened. In the same way, I think I've mentioned before that at times of full moon or at times of eclipses, certain things were observed. When Mars was in certain parts of the sky, people observed different types of conflict occurring. And so what happened over time was this like long study of influences ascribed to the planets, but also ascribed to the position that those planets are in. So if you think about it, imagine you're at a food court. And this has just come to me, so I'm hoping this analogy works. Imagine you're at a food court and you're with your family or friends, and you want a burger, and you also want some, I don't know, you want some sweet potato fries, and they don't do it this particular one, so you have to keep moving around the outside of the food court until you come to a different shop. An outlet where you can get sweet potato fries. And maybe you want a beer, which you have to get from a licensed bar, which is slightly further along. And maybe you fancy a bit of sushi. And so as you go around the outside of this food court, moving your little tray as you go along, you're going into different houses or different star signs. You're going into different areas of the food court. And it's a bit like that when the planet goes into one part of the food court, the cosmic food court, it picks up the flavors of maybe Chinese, and then it goes to another part and picks up the flavors of Thai food. And it's a bit like that. The star signs all have a particular energy. And part of that energy has been described to us over the years because of the constellation. So people have looked at the constellation, they've noticed what happens at the time that things pass through it, what kind of influences are going on. But they've also made stories up about the shape of the stars. And I guess it's the language of symbols. It's the language of images. Like for those of you that believe that God or life talks through symbols, you will understand exactly what I mean. You'll see something and it will mean something to you. And it might not have a language attached to it, but it's a deep intuition or a deep knowing. And so this is based on the observations of many people over millennia. Now, currently, most Western astrologers use 0 point Aries, i.e. when the sun goes into the sign of Aries. That's the time of the spring equinox. That's the entry point or the beginning of the ecliptic. If it was a belt, that would be where the join is. But of course, it's a continuous belt. It just keeps going around between Aries all the way the way round to Pisces, and it's just continuous. But effectively, the start of it is 0 degrees Aries at the spring equinox. And then it moves every 30 degrees, it changes signs. Now, there are some astrologers that prefer to practice sidereal astrology, and that takes into account the precession of the equinox. So it actually shifts back a little bit. So over thousands of years, the official starting place of 0 point Aries has shifted back into the sign of Pisces. And so some people will say, Western astrology, it's all wrong. And others will say, this is what we're sticking with. I actually think there are so many different methods or systems of using astrology. And when somebody comes to me, if they ask me to practice it in sidereal, I will draw up a sidereal chart. If they want normal or sort of conformed astrology, I will use the Western point of 0 degrees Aries. Essentially, I see it as a matter of time zones. If you think about planet Earth and the way we have our time zone set up, I mean, I currently have clients living in New Zealand all the way around to Hawaii. And the funny thing is, New Zealand and Hawaii, my clients there are possibly some of my closest living clients to each other. And yet there's a whole day separating them. So it is a starting point. So some people start their starting point of the star signs a little bit before the others. Does that make them right? Does that make the others wrong? I think it's a personal decision because astrology is a narrative and it's also a storytelling device. It's a way for you to find meaning. It's a way for you to understand your life. And the star signs are the poorest side of it, I think. And that will become apparent later as we look at the planets and the distance between them, the angles, the connection points between them. There's actually a lot more in that. And that's what I pay more attention to when I'm looking at charts. But anyway, let's have a look at the star signs. So it starts in Aries all the way around to Pisces. Now, have you heard that there are elements? Have you heard people say, I'm a fire sign, or I'm all water? Ooh, I'm so gushy. Or people say, oh, I'm rational, I'm an air sign. And other people are talking about earth signs. So there are 4 elements. And the 4 elements are fire, earth, air, and water. And so in the order that the star signs show up, we have fire. The first sign is a fire sign. That's Aries. Then we have earth. We have the sign of Taurus, which is an earth sign. Then we have air, which is Gemini. And then we have water, which is Cancer. And then it goes back to fire again. Next sign along is Leo. And then the next sign after that is Virgo. So it goes fire, earth, air, water. So Virgo is an earth sign. Then the next sign along is an air sign. That's Libra. The next one is Scorpio, a water sign. And then it goes through to the last 4 signs. What this means is we have 3 fire signs, 3 earth signs, 3 air signs, and 3 water signs. And the idea of this is that each of the elements has a different way of expressing itself. So the fire signs are very gung-ho, very direct and extrovert. If you think of a fire, it's bright, it's warm, sometimes it's punishing, sometimes it's actually quite deadly. It's expansive. It wants to grow outside of itself usually. Fires can't always be contained, so it's enthusiastic. Fire signs are kind of go-getters. And warm and explosive. They often have quite big tempers. Your earth signs are the ones that are slightly more grounded, which you'd imagine. You might want to imagine a mountain. So you might not be able to shift the earth sign so easily. They're very sort of nature related. They want to keep things very natural. They don't like airs and graces particularly. They're very down to earth, very practical. They're almost like, if you were to think of the suits in a tarot deck, the fire signs are like the wands, about their energy. And the earth signs are very much like the pentacles. It's about wealth and resources and the stability of having resources. The next element along is air, and they correlate to the swords in the tarot deck. So air is about intellect, rationality, thought, communication, sales, because it moves from one place to another. I mean, air, it moves all the time. It's airwaves as well. It's telepathy. It's the internet. It's thought waves, sound waves. Air captures a lot. It's also the written word. It's books. It's information. It's learning. So air covers a lot, and it is very much like the swords in the tarot deck. And then the last element is water. The water signs being Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, and they are the emotional ones. They're the ones that are more in touch with their emotions. They feel things a lot more, or they're more open about feeling things a lot more, tend to wear their heart on their sleeve a lot more. They're the easiest to get despondent at life. And water isn't always contained. It can be very deep. If you think about the ocean, there are parts of the ocean that are inaccessible to us in a way that we can often access the fire. We can see through the air. Okay, earth goes deep. We have to mine quite deep for earth, but it's rooted. We probably can find it. Whereas if you're trying to reach an emotion at the bottom of the ocean, how are you going to capture it exactly? It's very difficult. So the watery emotions are often very difficult to understand with the water signs. And they correspond to the suit of the cups in the tarot. So it's interesting, isn't it, how you have those elements. Then we've got what's known as the quadruplicities. And these give a quality of doingness or beingness of the signs. So, for instance, there is the cardinal signs. The cardinal signs, there are 4 of them. So the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And the cardinals are the initiators of projects. They get things moving. They are doers. Cardinal people are brilliant to have on a team because they plow on. They're not necessarily team players, not always, but they get things moving. If you want to get something moving, get a cardinal person involved, which is why a lot of Capricorns often find themselves in management positions, because they absolutely love to get things moving. And they can handle a corporate environment quite well in a much better way than an Aries person. So you've got the cardinal energy of go do it. Don't stop me. I'm moving. So they have to be moving all the time. Then you've got the fixed signs, and they are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And the fixed signs are grounded, rooted, stubborn, pretty stubborn. They don't want to shift. So, if you're talking to somebody or falling out with somebody and you're trying to get a mid-ground, you might be hard pushed with somebody who's fixed. You would have to do a lot of listening to them first before they'd even be considering shifting or listening to you. They are very fixed, and the world needs fixed people as much as it needs go-getting people, and as much as it needs the next lot, which I'll talk about in a second. But the fixed people are loyal, they're determined, they don't stop. Whereas the cardinals get things started, they don't always finish. They get things going and then they pass it on to someone like a fixed, because the fixed will carry on and they'll plod on. They're kind of ploddy. They are quite ploddy. So we need that energy because it gives persistence. And then there's the third energy, and it's possibly the least aspired to, though I think it's actually one of the most useful ones, because it's mutable, and the mutable is about changing. It's like a chameleon. So the mutable energy is changing, it's flowing, it's adapting, it's sharing, it's serving. The mutable energy is very happy to be of service and is very happy to flex and change and fit in with other people and fit in with other needs at the time. So it's not so set about how it expresses itself. It more adapts to the needs at the time. One of the dangers with people with a lot of mutable planets and sign sort of energy in the charts, one of the problems with mutables is they might bend over so much that they become people pleasers. They might bend over and bend backwards, and they often don't actually know what they stand for, because they're so changeable that people might think of them as being untrustworthy because they exhibit so many different styles at the same time. And yet their need to serve others is one of the drivers for this. So yeah, they probably get a little bit of a bad rep, and they're often seen as irresponsible because they're willing to change things. And they're the ones that, if you want to go out for a party at the last minute, you call on a mutable person, there they are. They'll go and do it with you. Other people might be like, I've already organized my time and I've got an important meeting tomorrow. Whereas these guys are like, bring it on. So they're good people to have around, but they're not always the ones that get ahead because they don't seem so useful. But every one of these signs or qualities has a purpose. And so if you think in the zodiac, you've got four elements and three quadruplicities throughout 12 signs. And what that means, as you'll see in the graphics, is that every sign is different. So for instance, out of the three fire signs, one is a cardinal fire sign, one is a fixed fire sign, and one is a mutable fire sign. It's the same with the waters, the same with the airs, the same with the earths. So for each element, there's a go-getting version of it. There's a fixed, grounded version of it. And then there's one that's prepared to give and take a little bit more. And so that's how they're formed. And I find that quite a useful way to think of the energy. So when I'm working with somebody's chart, rather than talk about the star sign in particular, I'll talk about the element and the energy of it, how it's best expressed. So for instance, if I have a look at the chart of Evelyn Thomas, her Venus is in the sign of Libra. And if you're looking at this, it's roughly at 9 o'clock. So her Venus is at 1 degree in the sign of Libra. Libra is an air sign and it's cardinal. So the planet of love is expressed in a a sort of dynamic, thoughtful way. And Librans are known for being diplomatic and balanced and beautiful and graceful and charming. It's kind of like straightforward thinking, straightforward connection. You know, like they're very graceful and generous and classy. The Libran energy is pretty classy and pretty good looking. If we have a look at Evelyn's Sagittarius, she's got a lot of planets in Sagittarius. So she's got her Uranus. We'll learn about this in the next chapter. And we've also got Jupiter. And she's also got Neptune in the sign of Sagittarius. Now, the sign of Sagittarius is a fire sign, so it's expansive. All three of those planets are expressed in a lively, expansive, and optimistic way. And they're also very changeable, so they're not really fixed. So Jupiter is very happy in that sign. It's the ruler of Sagittarius. Jupiter is bombastic. It's kind of really crazy, exuberant, full of himself, and ready to change at a moment's notice. So it's all very cool. So anyway, they're the star signs. What I'm going to do now is just give you a little bit of maybe a few sentences about each of the signs so that you can get a better feel for them. And what I would also do is recommend that you check out the ebook. In the ebook, I've spoken about the elements and about the quadruplicities. And I've also, there's one chapter per star sign, talking a little bit more about what they do in greater detail. Of course, I could write pages and pages about each star sign. Really, I just wanted to give you the theme of it. But Aries, as it's the first star sign, it also has a relevance to the first house. The houses and star signs are sometimes linked. But it's very much me first. If you think about the first house, it's very much about the body. So Aries is a fire sign. It's fiery. It's cardinal. It's a very directed fire. You'll know if you upset an Aries because they'll tell you and they won't mince their words. They're very independent. They don't like to be pushed around. They don't like lots of faff around them. You know, if you try and flatter them, they won't be impressed. They just want to be free and independent to make their own mark and make their own way in the world. They can be seen as loners, but actually they just like to do their own thing. They can definitely play and they can play hard. They're pretty good at extreme sports. They quite like things that challenge their body because they like a challenge. They are a very sort of fiery, strong, and determined sign. Taurus, then, they're fixed earth, so they're grounded. They're like an oak tree. When they decide on something, that's it. They're fixed on it. Taurus is ruled by Venus, so they're also aesthetically pleasing. They like things to look good, so it's like good-looking nature. So if you think of beautiful flowers and roses, Taurians tend to have a really beautiful sort of face, a lovely soft voice, and they want to create harmony, for sure. They're very resourceful. If you think about an oak tree, it grows and it's a really strong growth. And Taurus, to me, is like they have investments that grow and grow and grow and grow. Their resources are very strong usually. Taurians are quite good at accumulating money and using it in a very stylish way. Taurus, it's the second star sign, also has some relevance with the second house. If you think the second house is about money, it's about earning money, it's about how you value yourself. Taurians usually look after themselves quite well, with nice skincare routines, nice clothes. They love food, absolutely love food. They sometimes get a bit overweight, but they love life, and they especially love the texture and nature and the senses of things. The third sign is Gemini. It's an air sign and it's mutable. So they're here, there, and everywhere. If you think about thought and the fact that it's changing all the time, you can see why Gemini's are known, in Gemini, the twins, they're known as being two-faced because they might say one thing and then a moment later be believing something else. I don't think that is because they are two-faced necessarily. I just think they change their mind very quickly. They can hold two opposing ideas at the same time with no problem. A lot of other signs would really struggle with that, but they don't. They're related to early learning. If you think about the third house, which is like Gemini's the third sign, they have a resonance with brothers and sisters. So it's like brotherly love, sisterly love, cousins and busyness and meeting up. And, you know, if you know somebody that like goes to book clubs, is always in the local environment, always going out and about, always chatting to somebody locally, you know, stays quite close to home, but is always sort of sparkling with sort of knowing energy. They're not necessarily sharing great insights about the world, but they always know what's going on. Geminis are like that. They love to chat. There's a lot of chatty energy with Geminis. Cancerians, then, they are cardinal water. They're the first water sign. They represent the fourth house. Think of Cancer the crab. It's clearly soft in the middle and it's hard on the outside. If you think about a crab, it often hides under a rock or in a cave. So again, it's very private. It's quite hidden. And it's hidden for a reason because their bodies are really soft inside. They need that hard exoskeleton type thing. They need their shell. And it's a bit like the fourth house. The fourth house, this is the fourth sign of the zodiac. Cancer is ruled by the moon. And so they're quite changeable with the moon's energies. Someone with a very strong Cancerian aspect within their charts, you should really follow the moon patterns because that will make a difference to them. Their home bodies, they love their home. They usually love their mums. Even if they don't get on with their mums, they wish they did. They absolutely love to entertain at home. They don't need to go out like a Gemini does. Geminis are ruled by Mercury, by the way. So if you think of Mercury, he's here, there, and everywhere. Whereas Cancerians really love to be where they're safe and secure, and they will make their houses very safe and secure. And it's a need to know basis. You know, they won't have houses where everybody comes to unless they're all, you know, absolutely loved members of their family. You have to be in the circle of trust, you know. It's like, you're not in it, go away. And Cancerians, if you upset them or get too confrontational or trigger them in some way, if they feel like their soft underbelly is about to get attacked, they will close down. They'll go into their cave. You won't see them for days, sometimes months, maybe years. So you got to watch out. They're very sensitive. I know, I'm married to one, by the way. Now, Leo is the fifth sign of the zodiac. It's a fixed fire sign. So it's fiery and exuberant and it's dramatic and it's fixed fire. So imagine a fire that is almost like burning brightly and it's proud and it's loud and it's, oh, here it is. It's like the central bonfire on bonfire night. It's huge. And the personality of Leo is very dramatic and colorful and proud. And if you think of Leo the lion, it's the king of the jungle. He's the leader. So there's something very sovereign about the king. Leo is ruled by the sun, and the sun again is the sovereign planet in the solar system. But it's in the fifth house. It's about creativity. And if you think about it, everything comes from our sovereignty, our personal belief in ourselves and our creativity. So Leos have a very strong affinity with children. They're big kids. They love to play. They love to act and drama and music and painting and stuff. They absolutely love creativity. So you often find lots of actors and actresses have a very strong Leo energy, or you find people that are very happy to perform and happy to be seen out in public have a very strong Leo aspect, like maybe a Leo midheaven or a Leo ascendant or a strong Leo sun. Donald Trump's ascendant is a really strong Leo ascendant. Leos tend to have very strong hair, like the lion, you know, really, really strong. So yeah, they're pretty magnificent and very generous too, but you don't want to upset them because they're fixed. They will bear a grudge for a while. until you can make them laugh, and make them perform again. Then the sixth sign of the zodiac is Virgo. And Virgo is an earth sign and it's mutable. Virgo, the Virgin, they like things to be sacred. They like things to be natural. They're a real warrior as opposed to a warrior. There are some eco warriors that are Virgos. Virgos are very much into serving. They're mutable. They love to serve other people and they like to be practical. So they often don't make a fuss about things. It's the sixth house of the sixth sign of the zodiac, and it corresponds with the sixth house. So Virgo energy is often very related to health, and they often worry about their health. They worry about a lot because they're also ruled by Mercury. So the Mercury element makes them think a lot. You'll learn more about this when you think about the planets in the next session. So yeah, they're of service. They protect nature. They protect health. They are organized. Very, very good managers, office managers. They often find themselves in families or businesses where their skills are needed. Poor things often get overlooked because they don't often like to be in the limelight. So they're very practical and that don't like a fuss. Then you move on to Librans. Now, Librans are the seventh sign of the zodiac. They're in opposition to Aries. So if you think Aries is the first and is aligned to the first house, Libra is the seventh, aligned to the seventh house. If you think about the first and the seventh house, it is me versus you. So Libra is about partnership and other people. And Librans are also an air sign and they're cardinal. So they are about other people and sharing and balance. Libra in the scales is about getting the balance right. They're quite indecisive because they're an air sign, and they want to get things right. But because they're because they occupy the space of partnership, they are often very attractive, and they're ruled by Venus as well, which is the planet of love and grace. And so they're very kind, compassionate, artistic, beautiful. They love to be in sumptuous and beautiful environments. They're very lucky. They look good in all clothes. They don't seem to look bad at all. They're great, and they're very partnership orientated. They definitely want to. They'd be very good crisis management people. Who talk to people that are trying to jump off a building. They would absolutely say, "But hey, what about this? Come on, let's work this out." They'd be calling up on a loudspeaker. They're very good at negotiation and doing it in a pleasant way that doesn't upset people. So they're great. The next sign along is Scorpio, which is the eighth sign. It's fixed water. And if you know anything about scorpions, they've got a sting on their tail. So you want to watch out for that. Scorpio energy is ruled by Pluto, the planet of destruction and resurrection. Pluto carries with it some very, very strong themes. So water, you've got deep emotion. It's fixed, so it's emotion that can't go anywhere. So imagine emotion that can't go anywhere. You've got loyalty, trust, loyalty to the death. I will stick to you forever. You cannot get rid of me. When they fall in love, they often stay with them and would rather torture themselves than release and let go of things. So they grip onto things pretty tightly. And if you hurt them, they will get that sting out on you. Because Pluto doesn't take, any. He doesn't like being messed around. Scorpio is a very strong sign. It likes to control the emotions because it's a fixed emotional sign. So they're very powerful people. They often look very sort of magnetic and hypnotic, almost like if you're in their area, they might be able to persuade you round to their way of thinking through some kind of mind magic. They are associated with life and death and resurrection, so they do get ascribed some of the horrible stuff in the zodiac. They're often seen as very difficult and unyielding. If you think about the eighth house, it covers secrets, birth, death, life, taxes. The eighth house is about other people's values and resources. So inheritance, tax, other people's resources and emotions and values. So you've got blame, guilt, shame, and anger. And so Scorpio energy sometimes carries a lot of shame and blame and guilt and anger, and because of that, secrets. And so it's a really maligned sign and a really maligned house. In fact, it's one of the best houses in my or signs in my opinion, because it really shows how we can transform. If you think about compost, you know, what you don't want anymore, you put into the compost and it kind of crumples down, it decays, it becomes a mush. But without that, no life springs forth. We need the strong Scorpio energy. We need it to regenerate. We need to have interactions with people with a strong Scorpio energy, because they show us the darkness in us. They see it, they bring it out in us. And it's perfect. They see it in themselves as well. They're not silly. But from that sign can come a beautiful resurrection. And so I think it's one of the, it's an amazing sign if it gets used for amazing things. So yeah, it's deep. The next sign along is the ninth sign, is Sagittarius. It's ruled by Jupiter. It's a fire sign, so it's expansive and excited, but it's mutable. So it's one of those fire signs that is changing, shifting. It's not a fire you can contain. And actually, Sagittarians, ruled by Jupiter, which is the planet of expanse, they're known for having ideas and going wild with their ideas. Their ideas get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have to reel them back in. You have to like wind it back in, and it's really difficult to keep them on track. They're a nightmare to manage. I know, because I am a Sagittarius and I've got a lot of Sagittarius in me. So it's good that I work alone, because it's only me that I mess around with my big ideas. And sometimes my husband, bless him, who is sometimes like, oh my God, shut up. But anyone that has a strong Sagittarian around them will know that we have a good sense of humor. We like to joke around. We don't like things to be heavy. We like things to be light and bright, and sometimes a bit ballsy. If you think about, what's her name? She's passed away now, but a very, very strong, very rude comedian. Some of the Sagittarian comedians are very crude. Joan Rivers, she's a typical kind of Sagittarian. We're known for speaking out of turn. We're known for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. And it's because we don't think it through. We just, boom, it's there. Ta-da, that's what I was thinking. Oh, did that upset you? So it's often seen as a bit insensitive, because they're just so getting ahead of themselves. They say things before they think things through, but very, very kind-hearted, very expansive. And dare I say, you need visionaries, and Sagittarians are visionaries. A lot of Hollywood, whether you like Hollywood or not, but a lot of fashion icons, music icons, film icons, not necessarily the performers, but the people financing it, are Sagittarians. And a lot, Steven Spielberg, Sagittarian, and there's loads, and I can't reel them off right now, but there's lots of icons that have almost like moved the genre quite considerably forward, and it's only because they've had really far out dreams and they've not let themselves doubt themselves. They've absolutely gone for it. So there you go, that's Sagittarius in a nutshell. Also, because they're the ninth house, it's all about religion and beliefs and belief systems, and so there's a lot of religious or spiritual Sagittarians. They often have some kind of guiding force taking them off, and they often like to be footloose and fancy free. They go wandering, they like to live in different countries and go traveling. 3 more signs to go. If you're still with me, you've done well. Remember, you can check these all out in the book. So the next sign is Capricorn. It's the 10th sign of the zodiac. And so it's associated with the 10th house. Now, if you remember from the previous section, the 10th house is about authority. It's our reputation. It's how much we grow in the world, our career. And Capricorns, the cardinal earth, they're grounded and they want to go get. So it's no surprise that every single, well, not every, but mainly in when I last worked for a company, it's a long time ago because I worked for myself for a long time, but I worked for a large charity in Devon, South England. And there were there was a very large, wide team of middle managers, or senior managers, I should say. If they're listening to this, they'll be like, who senior managers are, I'll have you know. Every single one of them, Capricorn. They absolutely are very good at dealing with figures and the practicalities of things and managing things. They don't go soft. They do what they have to do, and they take the personality out of it, or the personal stuff out of it. It's fine to have friendships after and outside of work, no problem, but they are very work focused, very focused on achievement. They often, if they're very strong Capricorn, they often end up working for themselves. But rather than working as a consultant for themselves, like I do, they actually form businesses. So they create a business, they create a structure, and they grow. They have long-term goals and a lot more persistence. So whereas like a Sagittarian might have this big idea, and if it doesn't happen in the first 5 minutes, then they think, okay, let's leave that one. The Capricorn will think, okay, this is a big dream. Could take 20 years to achieve it, and I'm going to do it incrementally, and they'll give themselves a plan. And so even if they go off course, it doesn't matter to them. They keep on going. So they are sometimes known as being a bit cold, putting money or business or careers before their personal life. And I can see that does happen. I know lots of Capricorns, and I love Capricorns. I have a lot of contact with them. And they put aside the fun and the laughter sometimes for a serious goal. So they have an ambition, and they are absolutely dedicated to it. And I have to respect that. You know, we are all different signs, and we all have something to give to the collective. And if it was not for the Capricorn energy, you know, there would be a lot of infrastructure in the world that we wouldn't have. So you got to hand it to them. Yeah, they're ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is a planet that we'll be talking about in the next video. Saturn has a very strong energy. It's often rules and regulations, and it's not very yielding. Saturn can be a pain in the butt, to be frank. When we have a Saturn return, which you might have heard about, it's often a time when we all struggle. So Capricorns are not afraid to struggle. They can weather most storms quite well. Anyway, last two. So Aquarius, our 11th sign, and it corresponds perfectly with the 11th house. It's ruled by Uranus. Uranus is our wacky planet, and we'll learn about that in the next section. Aquarius is goes to the beat of its own drum. It's an air sign. It's fixed. So it's about belief. It's about thinking. It can be quite rational. It's quite practical and fixed in its thinking. So once it thinks something, it kind of sticks to it. They're very cause related. So there's a lot of Aquarians that are like part of Greenpeace and work for charities and volunteer, and they do the right thing. And they're much more worried about the collective state of the planet. And if you think about the quadrant that Aquarians are in, it is the quadrant about world peace. So they're very happy to work together, even though they can be quite stubborn at times. They see that the cause is much better than or more important than their personal needs. So they're often not always that stylish, you know. They can be accused of like caring so much about the principle of something that they just don't pay much attention to themselves. They're very depersonalized and unattached to things because they're very sort of like global and fixing it right. They're often very strong socialists, you know, because they want everything to be equal, on an equal footing. Very idealistic. And they're also very good at creating far out things for the future. They can be quite futuristic, and they have an understanding about technology and advances. They're very into the future. So it's a very interesting mix. And then this leads on to Pisces, the last sign, which is ruled by Neptune. It's a difficult planet to be ruled by, to be fair. And we will talk about that in the next lesson. Pisces is the 12th sign. It represents the 12th house as well. It's a water sign, so it's emotional, and it's also mutable. So it's like the ocean. It is the water sign that struggles the most, arguably, because it can't always find itself. Pisces want to merge with everything, whether they're merging with drink and drugs and getting off their faces and forgetting who they are, and I'm not saying that's exclusive to Pisces. I know people from every star sign that have done that, but they like to merge. They like to lose their identity. They're also another sign that are quite good as actors, a bit like Leo. They They like to lose themselves in a performance. That's how the Piscean does it. They're also quite interested in spirituality and mindfulness. So they lose their personality through transcendence and beauty. So they've got both of those opportunities. They're very emotional and possibly psychic. They pick up on things. They pick up on the collective feeling, the collective unconscious, the Akashic records. Very sensitive, very easily discouraged, beautifully creative, wide open hearts. They have practically no boundaries at all. So they're also quite often found in relationships where they give and they give and they give and they give, and someone takes advantage of them or gets a bit too close and takes too much, because they'll just keep giving. They could do with learning a bit of Aries, sort of, that's you, this is me. And then we come back round to the Aries energy. And so that's the whole belt. And that has been exhausting to go through. So I apologize in advance if that's been quite hard. It's a whistle-stop tour. I do talk about each star sign separately, in other recordings. And you can read the lowdown on them in the actual book and in the workbook. Now, in particular, in the workbook, there's an exercise where you can look at the houses and the star signs or the sun signs and where they are. So for instance, if you're looking at your Aries, you might say, okay, which house is my Aries in? Look at the Aries energy. It's fire, it's directed, it's independent. If it's in the 4th house, it might mean that you are kind of independent at home, almost like a lone wolf at home. Don't want clingy ties. If your Aries is at the beginning of the 7th house, you might, in your relationships, you might be independent in your relationships and not want ties. And you want to do things your own way, maybe not very conciliatory. So that's how it kind of shapes each of the star signs. So have a look at your workbook and start to complete that and see what comes up. You'll start to unravel and decode your chart. Moreover, you might recognize some of those characteristics in some of your friends. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope you found it useful. Probably if I was going to listen to myself now, I'd think, wow, that's a great resource, but I can't do it in one go. That's like 50 minutes. I would stop it and have a tea break and come back to it and have a think about it. While I'm having a cup of tea, have a think about the different signs. But anyway, that's a whistle-stop tour through the zodiac and the signs and the flavors. And just imagine how those flavors are coloring your rooms in your house. That's how it works in astrology. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you've got any comments, chuck them below. If you like this, subscribe, like it, share it, whatever. I just absolutely adore the fact that we get this chance to interact. Take care. See you in the next session. Bye for now.